Okay, we're live.
It's become your catchphrase, Bruce. Become your catchphrase, Bruce.
Yeah, that's my catchphrase. Okay, let's get going then. Thanks for joining us again. This is the fourth Totally Unscripted. And this week we are absolutely totally unscripted. So we'll have to see how this works out. So today what we've got for you is we've got some news that's going to come up from Martin, and I think Spencer's going to do a quick demo of a nice new thing that's come out. We've got Steve Webster, who's going to follow up on the monetization that we did, I think, in the last session. He's had some feedback from some people he'd like to share with you. And then we've got a brand new presenter, Bjorn, thank you for joining us, who's going to talk about how to materialize. That's to use the material framework for add-ons. And then if there's any time left, I'm going to have a go at doing some live coding, but we'll have to see how that works out. So let's get started, and over to you, Mon.
Thanks, Bruce. Well, in terms of news, we're kind of trawling through various wires and feeds, and there ain't a huge amount to the point of we can give you an update on error service, which is there is no update on error service. It still exists in the console. It still doesn't have any documentation, so we wait with bated breath to see if that one comes out. But something that hasn't come out from Google but seems to have caught a lot of people's attention in the Google Plus community is a new Chrome extension which allows you to integrate your Google Apps Scripts projects into GitHub. And there's various ways, previous bits of projects, Bruce has got his Gasket library that helps you do this. But the Chrome extension looks like a nice addition to the option. So I think give us a 2-minute demonstration of this.
Yeah, really quick, 2 minutes. All right, so this was posted on the community a couple days back, and let me share my screen here. All right, so if you go to the Chrome store, the extension is called Google Apps Script GitHub Assistant. You add it direct, you install it right from here. And now, whenever you get to, you go inside one of your projects inside the IDE, you have these new buttons right here: repository, branch, push, and pull. It's a very basic connector to be able to push and pull code directly to and from GitHub. So for example, I have this little project right here that I have. I can come to repository, create a new repo. Let's see. I can't even. I'm gonna have to shrink this down because I can't get that box to. All right, so I can call this weather gadget. So now I've created a new repo. There's a new repo that's been created called weather gadget. And I could take this, I can click push. It's push code to GitHub. And it's going to show me the difference between what's on GitHub currently and what I have on my side. And since it's the initial commit, there is, it's all green, meaning that everything's new. So I'll call this the initial commit. It'll shows that it has all the files for my project here queued up. And I can say push. And it says successfully push to master of weather gadget, and that's the master is the master branch. So it does support branch development, which is pretty neat. And then I can come over to my GitHub repo, my GitHub page, and I can see that I now have 32 repositories with a brand new one here saying weather gadget. And here it is. Here's my project. It's it gives me a blank README, and all my code is now here on GitHub. It's a very simple, very seamless way of getting code from and to GitHub. And I thought it was so nicely done that it was worth sharing.
No, I
Thanks,
definitely
Rick.
could have used that last night.
I think it's great that there's such a curve on GitHub, and I think this kind of lowers the level for people to have a backup of their code, be able to share their code, get people to, I suppose, as well, improve the code as well. They can fork something.
They can. They're you can do collaboration. Because you don't have all the deep commands that you usually get with Git. Such as conflict resolutions and stuff like that. If you have some conflict, this tool, you're not going to be able to fix that through this tool. You're going to have to work through the command line if you have to resolve conflicts between different forks if you're trying to do a push request and merge. But that's, this is enough to get your code up there and to pull it down. And from there, you can learn Git and learn to do all the deep stuff that most people are scared of. But for this extension, it's very simple, very easy to use, and it works as intended.
Actually, I can actually ask about that. If I remember correctly, GitHub can actually be one of the repositories to put up CSS files and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, they do have they do have
so GitHub
hosting
pages
on their site.
Yeah.
Go GitHub Pages has hosting on there. This will push it to a different spot. Well, you can push it up there, and then you can go to the Pages settings, go under Settings, and convert that to GitHub Pages, and you should be able to get a static link from there.
Okay.
That might be a useful thing for us to follow up next time, Spencer, just in terms of hosting resources on GitHub using GitHub Pages.
Okay. Yeah, it would be.
We'll see if there's positive noises for that. But the GitHub is free as well, so they have a free tier, so there's no cost there.
Yeah. And I like to point out, it was on the surface, this tool only works with public repositories, but if you know GitHub enough, you can actually go in and set it so it'll work with private repositories. So that's my 2 minutes right there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I threw the timer up. I did too many demo slams in my career.
So we've got another. So as Bruce mentioned, we've got a follow-up from Steve Webster on the monetization stuff he did last month. So if you haven't watched that, it's available on our YouTube channel. But over to you, Steve. What's kind of the reaction been to that initial broadcast?
Thank you, Martin. Yeah, we had some good feedback, so I just have a presentation of a slideshow here. I'm going to share someone's testimony of having a free add-on. Then they went to a paid plan for everyone, and I'm going to go over that little testimony. And then I want to have a brief continue the conversation of how to handle editor collaborators with payments, because it could get messy, right? You could be the owner of a spreadsheet, and if you are sharing that spreadsheet and you have to refund an account, who's it going to? So we'll talk about that with a quick demo. And then we also have a couple contributions. Stripe web app code is available thanks to Alan Wells, and we'll share this link after the episode. As well as Bruce, he has shared using Stripe with promises, which is an improvement based on the sample code that I gave. And we'll share that link as well. So let's just go into the testimony and my demo. All right, this person didn't want to reveal their add-on due to potential competition, so I'm trying to protect the innocent, if you don't mind. So let me just read this as you can read along. He said, for a long time we offered everything for free, and even after introducing a paid version, Most features remained free. Recently, we removed most features from the free version, essentially forcing many users to get a paid plan. Despite this bait and switch, we didn't get much user backlash, as we explained why we needed to do this and offered a long transition period and discounted pricing. So let me interrupt by saying he was very sensitive to the customer, right? So I think that was handled that very well. He continues, we now offer a free trial with full functionality for 30 days, and then they have like a pro version with most features for certain dollars per month. And they actually have another level with even more features with more dollars per month. Or the user can continue for free, but losing most of the features. We're doing the payments on our own site instead of within the add-on itself, and they're offering both Stripe for credit card usage or PayPal if they want to pay from their PayPal balance. Buyers can choose an auto-renewing subscription or a one-time payment. We display pricing in either United States or euros, depending on the user location. And finally, he says our sales of the add-on are now above $100,000 and growing on average 8% every month. Our expenses are low because we don't need to do any paid marketing. People find the add-on via the add-on store and word of mouth. So our profit margin is really high. And he continued to say that based on this experience, he went from doing it himself to a small team. So it is possible to go from free to pay and grow your little business. So I think that's fantastic. And then to wrap up this feedback, I just wanted to mention something. Let's use an example. One of the add-ons that I have with a partner of mine is TextG Blaster SMS texting, and we have a frequently asked question that says, where's my money? And we state, account balances follow the owner of the spreadsheet. If you purchase using a spreadsheet you own, you will get the credits. If you share the spreadsheet with someone else and they buy more credits using that same spreadsheet that you own, then the credits will go to your account, which is actually great for delegating, for like businesses. But don't worry, they will first get a notification explaining this fact if we detect they are not the spreadsheet owner. So I just want to give a quick demo, and then we'll wrap this up. So let me enlarge my screen here. So here's TextG Blaster add-on. So right now there is the remaining messages is 0, so it's time to refund on the next usage. So they click preview. They see what's about to be sent, right? If they click next, they have to have payment. But since I'm an editor of the spreadsheet, I'm not the owner, we want to make it perfectly clear that if they hit the buy and they pay with their credit card, it's not credited to their email account, but the email account that is the owner of the spreadsheet. So the point is, you could receive payment and assign it to, like, let's say, user properties. But if you do that, any collaborators won't have their balance. But if you choose to do it on a document basis level, then it's possible to share someone else's purchases. So it just depends on how you want to do it. Okay, and that is it.
So I suppose the immediate question that springs to mind is, so how are you storing that data? So are you using the property services, or for that particular aspect, is there a back-end database?
Yeah. For the texting add-on that we have, we are using a database, in this case a spreadsheet. And so when someone installs the add-on, we get their user email address, and we assign, like in this case, 50 free credits. So it's the owner of that spreadsheet. But if they share that spreadsheet with someone else, they can still use from that person's purchase. So it's true collaboration, right? So that's how we handle it.
Well, it's fantastic to see you can make money from add-ons, even though that Google haven't got. They keep talking about monetization, built in, but people have gone off and done their own thing, and I suppose if you've got the good product, people will pay for it.
That's right.
I'll just open. We've got a couple of people in, including Alan Wells. So I don't know if Alan wants to say anything about the Stripe web app he did, or if there are any questions from anyone else.
And Alan's muted, just in case you didn't realize that.
Well, Alan tantalized us with unmuting and then remuting. So yeah, it's
anything. I'm here.
Okay now. Oh, he's so tantalizing. He's playing with me. Any other thoughts or comments to chip in, guys?
Yeah, I have two things quick. Well, one could probably be a longer discussion, but this is pretty timely on, well, first on monetization. Anyone thought about adding Bitcoin into the mix? And then two was about I only just signed up for GitHub and learned GitHub in the past month and a half. I thought, I was about internally on my add-on. I was in the middle of version 13, right? And I was into one domain. It's all domain restricted, right? And so I decided I wanted to put my add-on into 2 domains. And I thought, I really need better version control. I suppose I should how hard could it be? I'll just learn distributed version control and figure out the whole GitHub thing. It'd take a couple of days. And so 1 month and 3 weeks later, I just about got it sorted, but holy crap, there's a bit of a learning curve there. And but that said, so here's my strategy, and I would like to talk more. If it's going to take too long, we could have another discussion offline or something, and then maybe talk about it later. But in looking at lots of people talking about how they use GitHub, like various people providing workflow packages on top of it or whatever, what I came up with. So this is me, one person who wants to do a startup, right? And I'm trying to shake out my requirements by taking a little slice of one capability and making that an add-on that I'm just going to deliver to a user base that I want to keep very small, so I can just spend my time learning about their requirements, right? So that's my approach. And I'm like, so what should my Git flow, I suppose, look like properly? That would make sense, so I can start maybe getting some help doing some of this, or just shaking it out. And that's because I have a process background, so I like to go slow before I go fast. I like to be very methodical. I don't like to feel like it's out of control. So anyway, so the idea was, and this is my approach, so I have about 12 versions, right, along the way, and they were all container bound. So version 12 is being used by a handful of users right now. And I'm in the middle of version 13, and that's when I realized, okay, I need to take it from being container bound to not container bound to standalone script world, which enables me to do the Git stuff and everything else, right? So here's the approach I came up with. So the regular Git flow is you have a repository, you branch on a change, in this case release, you branch on release, you do commits, you do a pull request to socialize or document the discussion, and you merge back into the master branch. It's a very simplified, basic flow that they teach you. And I'm like, okay, so that's what I'll do to catch up. So I was using kind of you guys would laugh, I have my own I almost want to call it a sneaker net, kind of just very old school version control. And one of the process steps in my add-on was review developer notes. And I just pulled from basically a spreadsheet of issues, right? So everything was either a known issue, a request, or a release note. and those were either open, closed, or internal. And so whenever the user went in there and said review developer notes, they only saw stuff that was open. It worked pretty well, really. Very methodical, but it worked. And so I'm trying to migrate into GitHub flow. That makes sense, right? So I bought an account for a private repository, $7 a month. And I want to consume what I documented in a smart way that's not, not wasting too much time. And so I'm in the middle of doing that. So I have a private repository, and for each, I just did the first release, right? So my idea is all my issues will live inside of GitHub, and I'll have to just get smart about how I use their labeling process, so it works well for me, and mimics how I'm doing my analytics. That part I haven't figured out yet, but I want to consume the issues and branch on each release until I catch up to version 12. Then I want to do some testing to make sure everything's working, right? So then I'll be in a standalone script. I'll have a copy and duplicate of what's in production. Only problem is, right, I'll have to publish again separately into 2 domains, and I'll be actually in a different container. So I'm gonna lose some history there, but oh well, right? It's a small user base, and that's exactly why I'm doing it, so I can do big changes like that. So the GitHub flow is fine up to that point. When I get to version 12, it's the next couple of days, right? So everyone's with me right there so far, right? That's probably child's play to you guys. And so then I'm thinking, well, what should a good flow look like what happens at version 13? Okay, so version 13, I think I want to try what I saw. I think it was a talk from that Atlassian group or something, and they had a very interesting flow.
You still there, Rudy?
Yeah.
We
okay.
lost you there.
Stop. Yeah. Okay. So they had a very interesting flow, and the idea was that you maintain a master. So at the point that I've synced on version 12. I have that Git flow master repository that's working. So then I want the last branching on release will be my current in process version 13. And what I think I want to do is create an integration branch. And then, so just for version 13, I'll branch on version 13, which is my current in process, right? Then when I have when it consumes all of its existing issues that I want to close in that release, I will merge that branch into this so-called integration branch. Now, what I want to do is test that, and when I'm happy with that, deploy into my 2 domains, make sure everything's cool, and then merge the integration branch into the master. Now, here's where it gets a little confusing. What it seems like people are suggesting who have more experience than me on this they're saying what you would think you would do is that you would move from integration into master, but what they were suggesting, and that's where I got a little lost, was that I should back up. All right, let's for that for 13, right? I know it's working in my new production. I'm ready to kill the existing version 12, right? I merge that into master. All right, so now I'm in new standalone scripts versioned into 2 domains in separate containers with 1 GitHub repository called master. All right, so now what the suggested sort of modified Git flow model is, then you create a parallel integration branch, and then you branch from master on every issue. Then you work every issue and you merge into integration. And when that's working, when you're ready to put it in we'll call it production, when you're ready to deploy it, whatever your deployment process is, you actually merge from the issue straight into master. And
see, I've never branched off issue. I always found branching off features personally to be more native to the development cycle. Well, honestly, because I ended up would have 20 issues, and trying to manage 20 branches and then trying to merge the 20 branches, you're always going to come up with some beautiful conflicts.
Right. So that's my question then, right? Because I want to stay inside of GitHub as much as I can. The only external tool that I thought I needed to manage my flow at this small scale is simply that I added Review Ninja on the pull request side, so I have a manual code review check. And so that's it. And the people at SAP offer that on their open source team, Review Ninja. It's really simple. But all it does is when you ask a pull request, it throws in some process steps that you have to throw it a Ninja star. You say how many stars, and then it's approved for merge. It's kind of a nice little outside tool. And that's the only thing that I'm doing in there. So that's the question is like, if I want to use projects to have my little, kind of like my little agile boards, right, for doing code sprints, and milestones inside of GitHub are simply just groupings of issues. It seems like issues, it seems like the way they've implemented everything is so smartly minimal that you can configure it to do what you want if you just give it a little thought. And I just want to make sure that I'm giving it that thought. So I'm doing this tug and pull about branching on issue versus branching on release. Maybe there's just like, if I had 20 developers working at the same time, this whole like integration approach would work. The one thing I did notice, I also found in GitHub's engineering blog, somebody was talking about they actually do deviate from the Git flow in that, and it's kind of similar in this approach that I described that Atlassian was recommending with a parallel integration branch, is that they publish or deploy from the pull request. And then when everything's working well, they keep it around a little bit, then they merge it back into master. So I like the idea of master always reflecting absolutely working code that your users are using, right? And the reason that the only reason that the branch approach is interesting is because you could have a hotfix that just branches on the hotfix. It could merge into master. Then you could just take those hotfixes and put them back in your integration flow. But then I just see a lot of strange housekeeping on the integration line. So I'm a little lost. That's where it gets gray on me. So I don't know if you guys had any comments in general.
Well, really, that's your flow is actually even more in depth than what I use on my projects. Again, though, I haven't collaborated with more than 2 other developers at a time, though. But I would say, get with me offline, and maybe you and we can even record the conversation and put it up on the channel, and we can talk about this a little bit more in depth. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
One last thing on the other thing that I had to learn was I tried to teach myself Node so I could write myself a program to push my code into Google, like one step at a time. And I thought, like, well, I got caught up and it's like, it's going to be kind of tricky. I got the template working and the OAuth 2 working and all of that. And, command line drive, I think I called it. And, okay. And that was interesting. Right. But then instead of getting caught up in like, well, how should I push it to my one or more domains, right? I thought, well, I should just stomp, right? What I call stomp. I should just always put the code into Google Drive as part of my deployment process, and that gets a little trickier. And maybe at some point, a couple of months down the line, I'll show you what I'm doing. But what's the word? So I was interested in the add-on that was shown at the beginning. About pulling your work, but I was wondering, I'm using Atom now, which also has a learning curve, but it's pretty neat. Mostly the packages do, not Atom itself. But if I want to put something, I was trying to think about, okay, if you're using desktop from Git on a Mac, and you're learning how everything stays in sync, right? It's like they're almost hiding too much from me. And I'm kind of wondering, like, well, then if I'm writing something in Node, if I go to terminal, right, how, if I'm working in the file system in Node, how do I know that I'm working with the right branch? You know how if I say from Git desktop open Atom, it opens whatever branch I'm in. But how does Node know where the heck I am in the code that's being displayed? Do you follow the question there? Maybe that's
yeah.
Well,
I think that the Git command tool itself will keep the fresh version, your whatever branch that you're checked out on. It's going to keep those visible to the file system. So you just have to make sure that using your Git tool that you're checked out to the proper branch. And so when they go into the browse into the file system, those are the visible files. So, but we can, again, this is more that we can get offline. We can talk about doing import export, because that's something that I do extensively using a command line process builds into from my command line to projects. But I think we need to move on, and you and I can get together and cover this more in depth.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a nice segue into Bjorn, primarily because he's a GitHub expert. And
as I'm sending out an email to you guys last night, saying, how can I post this publicly?
So I think we are discovering GitHub has quite a curve. I think Spencer's going to catch up with Rudy on that one, and we'll save Bjorn's expertise on GitHub for now and talk about his expertise within materializing his AppScript project. So welcome to the show, Bjorn, and let's see what you got.
Oh, God, my expertise is on keeping it as simple as possible and me do the least amount of work. So that's kind of where.
To me.
Hey, I know we had a great conversation before we went even on air about just UIs for all these add-ons, and I think several of you mentioned. I mean, I think Choice Eliminator, which is my popular add-on, the actual code to remove the choice is probably like 25 lines. And then I gotta have another 2,000 lines that are just dedicated to UI. So I think a lot of developers are finding that, and especially these beginner ones, because I have a full-time job at school, so I build something when it's needed. So in my laziness, when I was redoing Choice Eliminator, I wanted to streamline my UI building, and I also kind of wanted to, since it's a form add-on, and that's just after forms came out with in the material design, I really wanted to play with that and learn about it. So I found a couple. So you start the research and you find that there's something called frameworks, which is great. It really helps out. Some of them are more complete than others. I think Google has Angular, which is, I think, their own repository, and that's incredibly powerful. And if you're a copy and paste programmer, like I actually am, it can be cumbersome. So I kept looking around, and the other thing that happened around that same time was Google had taken away the hosting. So I needed to find a solution that I was hoping to find a solution that was hosted its own CSS and JS files. So what I came up with is I actually found something called Materialize. I'm going to kind of share my screen now. Hopefully transitioning into that. And what Materialize is just basically framework. So if you're looking down here, there's a form section, and under the form section it has input fields, and they're really nicely formatted. I mean, I know for myself I wouldn't be able to add these elements in. If I had to build the CSS for this, it would take me forever. And I know this is probably not the practice that Google wants us to do yet, since they still have their CSS guidelines, and I just completely ignored them and went with this. And I've published an add-on with this, ignoring their setup. So just to kind of show you what it might look like and what you can kind of do with this pretty simply is I created some templates. This Materialize CSS is actually roughly what I have for my choice eliminator, where I have some things that can pop down and up depending on the questions, and I have choices up there. But something I found out really helpful is that material design, while I think it's actually ugly, it's great for the programmer. And it allows us to bring in elements like the side menus that are hidden. So it allows us to bring more elements into the add-on, even though we have a really small area to work with. So I thought I'd just kind of show off some of the tools that I've been using and how it works, and looking at the code. Starting off with actually a blank dialog. So one of the things that I also found when I was doing these is a lot of people wanted like a header for putting information and a footer for putting information and scrolling in the middle. I don't know about you guys, but it took me forever to get that. And I finally found one that works. And this is posted on GitHub. I was able to get that this morning, and I can post the link, but there it's edlisten/tu4. We'll have all these, and I'll probably be playing with that extension a little bit more. But just to kind of start off with, getting in there, under Materialize, getting started, they provided their own compiled versions. So I just grabbed theirs that they host on their website. I'm assuming they're going to keep them up to date, and I can just switch the version number if they ever have different versions. So I added those in. So I added the style sheet for Materialize. I actually added the style sheet for Google's fonts and icons, which I will show later, which I think is another great resource. I did notice that add-ons themselves have some issues with certain CSS, namely will change is if you have a will change in an add-on, it adds this bar on the side, and you can't see it, but I'm raising my hand up and down as we're doing this. But right here, the body, header, footer, and the top margin. So all my scripts now have this as a base where I keep a header, a main area, and a footer. And I've gotten it down so all I have to do is just put the pixels that are going to stay on the top and bottom. So that's a good starting point and a great UI tool in there. And there's a bunch of other stuff you can put in there, like different borders and whatnot. But for the most part, I've got it broken out for there. So that's something that I'd encourage people to, take from the scripts. I'm a jQuery fan, so I'm familiar with that most. So I did add jQuery in there and Materialize. So that's how I started off all my scripts now. Kind of moving forward with that is some other elements that we can use with it. I mean, there's a blank dialog. That sidebar nav that we have, that I put up there, where you can just kind of pull out. And it gives you a great way to set up different things. Can you do that? Mm-hmm. So with this, I have it being able to switch between windows. So now,
sure, I'll check the
yeah.
Check what printers you shared with you.
Yep. You can also have external links, such as, I mean, I have an external link to my donor page. which is just basically the PayPal page. You can have it open up dialogues in the background, and even a new sidebar can kind of go back to it. So how did I do that? I thought that was a good place to start. So in the repository here, they have several different places that we can play with. I think the sidebar nav is under JavaScript. Yeah, it's under JavaScript. So what's nice is it gives me the little window. It gives me a demo of what it can look like. It gives me the code that I can play with. And in this case, it does have an initialization, so I do have to add some stuff to the JavaScript end of things, and some options and other variations. It looks like they can be pulled as a drop-down. So to get this to work, I've had to add this element right here, which is the initialization for it. I added a section for navigation, so this is actually my full-on navigation where I have to slide out, and it's just different lines. And I have hyperlinks with basically on click, it goes to whatever function I have running up above. So I have a show hide for different sections of my script. I also use the material design icons right here. These are a lot of fun. So Google. Once you have those in here, this is another material design icons that we have. If you look, there are tons of ones that you can search through. And you can even search up above and a filter down. What's nice is that once you click on it, all you need to do is actually just change the wording right here. So I have a class, icon materials, play arrow. If I just wanted to change this to play arrow, I just change this word to play arrow and it will work. And that shows up. These little icons right there. So it really gives you another layer that you can work with. So once I've built my menu, all the navs here, some dividers, plain old HTML there, took me a little bit to remember how I got it to work. But in my header section, I had to call this one part. And what it does is it's basically calling that creates a link to call to that nav bar to open up. It does use the material design icons. So right here I have the material design icon for menu. And programmably, one of the tools that I actually did is this little menu icon also works great as a spinner. So if my add-on was doing something, a lot of times I would take the menu icon and just have it spin until the process was done. And I thought that was kind of a cool little trick you could pull for the menu icon. So adding that in there, adding the link, adding the navigation allowed me to create the slide out nav. And I'm just using to switch between views here, between the Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. Under my main section, I just have a Coyote section and a Roadrunner section. Right now, the Roadrunner is just displayed none, so it's not showing up. And the functions that I'm running, it's either show Coyote or show Roadrunner, is just hiding and showing those. I forget the actual term. This is what you get for being a copy and paste programmer. But I thought that was one of the nicest menu options for getting links out there. Other tools out of there, I mean, there's some nice carousels that we can add to your add-ons. And like I said, the code for this is very minimal. So being able to create really nice flip-throughs. This is this code right up here plus one initialization. Collapsible, being able to bring things in and out, are other ones I've used. Dialogues, drop-downs. Under the components, this is where you can have the different buttons, floating, and a lot of times that nice little floating out one where you roll over it and it pulls out. That one wasn't very hard to implement either. So under, I think, form, I have this pull out. And if I go look at the form section in here, there is no initialization that's needed for this one, unless you dynamically add some of these tools. Sometimes they'll have you going on. But coming right down to the bottom, all I did was take this one little bit of code, and for time, all I did was actually just kind of copy and paste this one block, pasting it in. Now it gives me the items I can add to. I can, like I said, take links. I can link them to other functions within my add-on. So those are two very good space-saving tools. Spencer, you gonna stay awake there?
Sorry, my eyes aren't good, so I'm just kind of squinting.
I'm the one that was up all night. Thanks, compliments of my wife coming home at 2 a.m. in the morning from a conference. So. But yeah, and some of the other ones that I did is playing with the containers. I thought this was nice, where just by adding a div statement saying it's inside a container, I already gave it with some nice preloaded margins. What else is in there? That's a lot of fun. Columns and rows. This took me a little while to kind of understand, is that in material design, or I guess at least in this version of material design, Materialize, grid. Is it grid? Yeah. It breaks where you want to put things up, not into tables like where you might be used to. It actually breaks it up into 12 columns, 12 physical spaces. And the reason they do this is once you kind of start really getting into this, come on, where's this? It allows for columns within, basically it's added responsive design for mobile events. And in terms of add-ons, the sidebar is a very good mobile size versus the dialogue, which is more computer size. So this really helps with the responsive design in terms of setting things where you want them to show up and what it's going to look like. So in this one, as you can see, it's 12 columns if it's on a full width. On mobile, I think it's going to show like the first 6. That's what I guess the M6 is. So you have the ability to specify how many columns they're showing, which ones are showing up there. But I have my little thing here that says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, and these blocks for setting different sizes. So where is rows and columns? So rows and columns here. This is my first block. I have it as a row right here. Chose the background to be teal because setting up the color, they have a color usage chart right here. You basically pick a color and then pick a shade for almost any one of their elements. You just type the word teal under the class and then the shade that you want it to be. So I have purple here, teal here. You have rows and columns, so you build your format using these rows and columns. The first one I said, S1, S1, S1 means space 1, space 1. The second one that I have right here, the first one I said was using 1 space. The second one is actually S2, means it's using 2 spaces. Third one is using 3 spaces. And you can kind of see that where it's using 1 space, it's using 2 of the spaces, 3 of the spaces, 4 of the spaces, all the way up to 12. You can offset things, and it doesn't matter the content that you put in here. So the hover panel that I have down here looks just to be a container. Aligning things is, again, using different classes. So instead of building your own version of CSS and figuring out where it goes up there, they've already pre-built a lot of those. So all you have to do is just add the different terms right inside the different classes of either containers or right inside the div statements. Again, what it does is it allows you to create some really cool design elements right within a with minimal coding and minimal work on the developer's end of things. So all those developers who can build the little functionality but hate building the UI, well, first of all, raise your hand if you're one of those developers. Yeah, I figured I'd at least get Spencer there. Is really, yeah, it's easy. The only other one I wanted to kind of show off that I found that kind of goes along really well with our GitHub repository notions is this FAQ that I kind of built with changelog and roadmaps and everything else. One of the things I found is trying to get the information out to my end users about changelogs and new information. It became hard. It's hard to hard code that information into your application. So you either have a tendency to make it completely separate on a different website, or you have it hard coded into your add-on. What this actually is using some of the elements that I had found with Materialize. So there's the opening and closing. And it pulls it straight from a spreadsheet. So I keep this one spreadsheet, and it doesn't matter how many little tabs I have down on the bottom. If I add one more, and keep a title and description title for, and some smiley faces. When I go to my add-on here and load this up, sheet 6 TU4, it automatically pulls it from the spreadsheet. So really, again, another design element, easy to update for the developer, pulls it in, and the code for that one, here's my FAQ code. This one I launch a little bit different. I actually launch it as a, where is it? Where'd it go? Right here. Oh, I'm forgetting the word. As a, I think the templated one, where it can use embedded information. So I just grab all the information from the sheet, launch my dialog with sending over the HTML data, and then inside my function, when I build, what I do is I use that data and I build the rows and I build the columns and I build the sizes that I want it to be and the content that is put into it. So I use the collapsible pop-outs and the accordions. And so I dynamically have created it all. And the only thing in my HTML that I have that puts it is this one little div statement that says this is where my content's going to go. So, well, not even 90 lines of code to build really nice updatable elements that look really good to the end user, but easy to update for the developer. I mean, I could show more examples, but the idea is it's pretty simple to add to it and play around with. So, any questions, any comments, any additions?
We've got a question from one of our and I had to check this out myself. In the Google Apps Script documentation, it says to maintain the styles of Google editors, please avoid using material design or Polymer elements in your add-ons. And I just wondered if you got any pushback from the add-on review process about using material design.
Actually, not so much. I revamped an add-on that was already published. So Choice Eliminator was already published with the old design elements. But what I did do after the fact is I created a light version. And they gave me a little bit of pushback and saying, hey, this doesn't look like it's supposed to. But I said, you know, it's the light version of something that's already published. And they let it go through fine. I mean, I was surprised. I was expecting a lot more pushback with it. I'm hoping that as long as it looks good, they seem to be okay with it. I think using the frameworks really does help get your add-ons the way they should be, and just the space saving and things like that. I mean, I was using jQuery UI before that. They didn't really have that much problem with jQuery UI either, because it added those nice elements and looked professional. So,
well, I was just going to interrupt by saying, when Forms was redone using material design natively by Google, it makes sense to me to have an add-on that's also using material design. Now, if you're using a spreadsheet that is not material design, then to me that's apples and oranges, and we should conform. So that's just my opinion.
I agree. Like I said, I started this off on a form add-on right after they launched the new form. So, yeah, I wasn't going to make it look like the old one.
I know, Bruce, you've used a different material, a CSS styling in your spreadsheet add-ons.
I use MUI CSS, which it does the same kind of things, but it's a lot. I would say it's a lot less complete. And the point that was brought up was to do with whether or not we should be trying to conform to the design of the spreadsheet or the host document, and I think that's right. I think Bjorn has done that by using material design in forms that are actually material design. On the spreadsheet, I still use the I would say the component design of the add-ons. In other words, I include the add-on CSS, etc., etc. But I use the material design framework. It's not really a framework, but let's call it that, for as the to make things quicker to put together. But yet it still comes out looking as if it was a regular add-on. But behind it, I'm using the CSS, MUI CSS to kind of do the hard work. So eventually, the good thing about that, of course, is that when sheets and docs eventually do become materialized, it's going to be rather easy to convert existing add-ons that have been built that way into, you know, the same kind of format as the host document. But it's quite possible to use the mechanisms of the material design frameworks that they provide, but yet make it still look like you're not, which is what I tried to do.
Okay, so you're using the add-ons provided CSS, you know, so for example, things like buttons, there's, you know, clear guidance on action buttons and things like that. So with those, you're using the add-on CSS, and then for other elements, you're trying to lay out using the MUI CSS.
Yeah, I would say that I used it for laying out as opposed to styling. The styling that it comes from the add-on CSS, whereas the laying out comes from the MUI framework.
Yeah, and there's plenty of things. I mean, that's why I had the collapsible information. That was something I started in jQuery UI, moved over to Materialize. It's not really in the style sheet that Google provides to us. So it was kind of a gray area, but it really helped out for me producing information. So, and like the carousel with the images and things like that. So the few buttons and text fields, maybe we can keep the same, but there are certainly elements that we can pull to make our add-ons look nicer and easier for us to add those elements to.
And by the way, my last two add-ons went through the review process without any modifications being required. So clearly they're okay with it, you know, in terms of of how it goes through.
I think it leads on as well to, you know, the components that you showed were very basic ones in terms of giving a good user experience. You know, things like you know, drop downs that have, you know, search capability if you've got lots of options. Are there particular frameworks or components people are using for those that can be recommended?
I was using Materialize. Actually, one of my add-ons, now that I think about it, that I did publish afterward. It's a spreadsheet add-on. Get add-ons. Is a spreadsheet one that does use Materialize, and I didn't get any fight back when I was using it. Am I sharing my computer screen yet?
Yeah.
So here's one that's using the Materialize design that I had there. Here's a text field. I have it doing different filters in there. I have it turning on and off different things. So here's an example of something that went through using these design elements that, you know, the text field was not under their guidelines, but it went through. I also think it's a nice material design element that is working with a spreadsheet. So they're getting, I think, they're not as strict about that as they may want to be. Or they say they are, however that goes.
In terms of other frameworks people are using, is any favorites? You know, we've heard about Bruce's what was it?
MUI CSS.
MUI CSS. What about you, Steve? You've got quite a few add-ons out there. Are you just doing your own CSS, or are you using anything in particular?
Remove blank rows. I use what they recommended. With Text GBlaster, I got crazy. I used jQuery Mobile, which is different. And one of the reasons why I went there with that was because Google supports jQuery in general.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I want to use a framework. Maybe I'll just play with that. It's been kind of fun using that. It's very similar. Then I'm working on an add-on for a customer, and I'm using the MUI CSS.
Lots of choice out there. In the recent, not an add-on project, but a web app project, I was using Semantic UI. So that had some nice components to it, like steps and searchable drop-downs. So there's a lot of choice. And that one seemed to, I could drop the code into the script editor, so there was no issue. I suppose that's the other thing to bear in mind, is where the stuff is hosted. But in the script editor, I could pull it from there. Well, I'm conscious on time. I'll just let's see if anyone else has got any comments or questions for Bjorn.
Okay.
I guess not. But anyway, conscious of time, thank you for everyone who's joined in for this episode of Totally Unscripted. Thanks for Bjorn coming along and showing some of the stuff that he's been doing. I think it's really interesting. Personally, I find that the code takes minutes, the UI takes days. So anything we can have that shortcuts it is very welcomed. If, like Bjorn, you'd like to come on to the next show and show off something, I'll drop a link into the to the show with the Google form, or like Bjorn, you can just ping us on Google Plus, and you too can be here enjoying. Thanks again also to Steve for going over some of, extending some of the monetization conversation. It kind of echoes his first episode on that last month, where he did underline the fact that there was a conversation starting. So perhaps it's a conversation that will continue. Thanks also to Spencer for giving us that 3.5 minute tour of GitHub extension, and I've got a feeling we might be revisiting GitHub again in future episodes. I'd also like to thank Bruce, who had some words with basically on his blog post recently about basically having a framework for creating settings for your add-ons that you can reuse across add-ons. But I'm sure Bruce will be following that up with another blog post, or we can pick it up in the next episode. And I think that's it. Have I missed anyone or anything out from that, Bruce?
No, I think you've done a great job, Martin. Well done.
Well, I think quite a few of us in this hangout are now going to go for a lie down, and we'll be snooze. But thank you. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.